Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Brian Gatens. Good to be back. This is episode 52 of the Dark Zone. Been quite a while since our last episode, just about a month, due to the fact that I had very busy stuff going on at work. Post-COVID life in American schools is back to normal, and that's wonderful. But it's been very busy, especially at night. Combined with the fact that about 2 weeks ago, I caught a really bad cold. It wasn't anything serious, but it took my voice away for quite a while, and I couldn't record. It's still a bit scratchy right now if you listen carefully. So great to be back. This episode is being sponsored by the New York Adventure Racing Association, nyara.org. Their premier event is coming up this August, The Longest Day. So be sure to check out nyara.org to learn all about their upcoming races. And thank you to them for being a sponsor. Today's episode guest is David Webster of team ACDC AR. I met David in Scotland this past summer. He was a fellow racer at the ITERA 5-day race, a beautiful, fun race. David has a great story. Fascinating how he jumped right into adventure racing with both feet. I don't want to get ahead of his story, but it really is something else. He had a great time in Scotland. He had a great experience. He had his ups, he had his downs, but he did a great job on the episode, and it's wonderful to have him on board. Hope everybody had a great American Thanksgiving. It is the day after that auspicious holiday here right now. And for those of you going into your winter training in the Northern Hemisphere, going to work hard to get you episodes out on a weekly basis to make up for the delay in publishing. I'm a little backed up, so I have a lot of content to give you. Thanks for being a listener to the Dark Zone. It means a lot to have you out there. You have a lot of ways to spend your time. You spend your time with us, and we are very, very grateful for that. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of the Dark Zone. Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. We are joined by David Webster of team ACDC AR, primarily a UK team, with one racer from Israel who had joined them for the recent ITERA Scotland, a big race put on, started in Oban, went all over the western part of Scotland. David dove in with his team. Nice doing this interview. Is David, I passed you on the course multiple times. We saw each other out there more than once, as a matter of fact. Our teams kind of leapfrogged each other over the course of it. Welcome to the Dark Zone. Thanks for giving us the time. Glad you're here. Tell us your origin story. Tell us how you got into adventure racing. Is this your 50th expedition? Is this your first expedition race?
Yeah, so this was my first expedition race. I kind of got into expedition racing and adventure racing, actually. My first adventure race was this expedition one.
Wait, time out. So this was your first adventure race?
Yes. Yeah.
So no 6 hours, no 12 hours, no 24 hours. This was going for it. This is going to be, you're going full bore ahead. This is your race.
Yeah. The journey, the expedition part of it was the appeal to me rather than the race aspect. So I'd seen some 6 hour races. There was a Questars race series in the UK here that some friends had taken part in, but that didn't quite appeal to me the same way that the expedition length races did. So,
interesting. Okay, so you figured a 5-day, 120 hour, that was the right way to jump into it. Well, let's back up a little bit. You didn't clearly step off the couch and do this. You have a history, I'm assuming, of outdoor pursuits.
Yes. So my background's primarily whitewater kayaking. That was my main sport through my teens, through university, and my 20s as well. And then I got into mountain biking after that. I've done a fair bit of hill walking. I've spent 13 or so years volunteering with a search and rescue team. So I've got the nav aspects pretty dialed. So I had all the pieces, all these little jigsaw pieces for adventure racing, but it wasn't until I sat on the couch watching Eco Challenge Fiji that I actually realized that expedition length adventure racing was a thing. It was a sport that people took part in. And that's, I was looking around for races to happen. This was probably June 2021.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of months off of ITERA Scotland was planned. I figured a couple of months probably wasn't enough time to get fit enough to take part, to build a team. And then I saw the post saying it had been postponed for a year due to COVID. And that was, for a lot of folk who had been training, that was probably quite a...
it was frustrating for us. It was good for you.
Yeah, it worked out really well for me because it gave me that just over a year to build a team, convince some folk to come with me, and get race fit.
So clearly, you point out the fact that yes, this being your first adventure race is there isn't a bigger pool for you to jump into than really an expedition race. You could do a 10-day race, right? That's bigger, but 5 days is pretty far at the far end of the spectrum. But to your credit, you had talked about your kayaking, your mountain biking, your hill walking, your nav, and to your point, all the pieces did matter, right? And you could put all those pieces together. But it's one thing having a skill set, and it's another thing finding 3 people who are going to join with you on it and who are going to jump into this with you. Talking about your teammates, who were they? How did you recruit them? Did you know them? Did you not know them? How did that come together?
So to start with, I reached out to a lot of my friends who were, a lot of my friendship group come through kayaking, similar journey to me, the mountain biking and such like. So the problem was the commitment because it's, as I found out, it takes a lot to train for an adventure race. It's even the race itself is over a week away from family.
For the most part, it becomes the not the center of your life, right? But it becomes a centering point of your life where you really need to think a lot about, I got this thing on the horizon, I have to get ready for it. And so when you ask someone to race with you, you're not just asking for the 5 days, you're asking them for the 12 months leading up to it. And that was tough for some of your friends, it sounds like. It was hard for them to put that together.
Yes, it was. And we had a couple of people on the team who liked the idea, didn't quite have the time commitment, or it wasn't the right time in their lives for it. So the team makeup varied a bit, but Alex Holt, he was on board from pretty much from day one, and Conrad, another a longtime friend of mine through kayaking and biking, he joined up, and the fourth team member took a bit of time. In the end, we ended up going to the ITERA Facebook group, putting a message out there to try and find someone from the community who was keen to join, and that's how we got connected with Karen. And she's done some of the races before, so I think she took a big punt with us having.
It sounds like she came to the table with the most race experience.
Oh yeah, none of the rest of us really knew what we were letting ourselves in for, and
Gotcha.
She did, and still decided to join a group of rookie racers.
Credit to her. And so for the 3 of you, this was the first adventure race, and then she was experienced.
Yes.
So you you watch Eco Challenge Fiji, right? Which, by the way, is a very common gateway, right? The Eco Challenge, whether it be the older videos, and anybody who's listening to this who's interested, definitely go over to YouTube, Google Eco Challenge Morocco. I mean, fascinating, great watch. The resolution is, resolution from 20 years ago, but it's great to watch. You have all this background. You watch Fiji. You start building this team. You bring your 3 teammates on board. You're all training on your own. Before the race, before you actually got to the Oban and you began to the race itself, what kind of training days did you put in together as a group? Was that the first time you were all together, the 4 of you, or were you able to get yourself on the same page?
So yeah, first time we were together as a 4 was when we picked Karen up from Heathrow on the Thursday before the race. So we'd had Zoom calls together, a lot of WhatsApp messages for few months beforehand, but
yeah, the first time you actually shared a space was in the car riding to the race.
Yes,
that is classic adventure racing origin story right there, right? Karen takes the leap of faith. She signs up with these 3 neophytes. Let's go for it. You meet each other and you decide to undertake what's going to be an intense 5-day experience. So let me ask you this: a year of your life is thinking about this. You're training, you recruit your friends, you get going. What was it like? We're going to get to the race itself, but what was going through your mind, and how was the team dynamic in that experience? Getting from Heathrow to Scotland to Oban, getting to you were in the hostel there. You had your maps. Walk me through up until the race start, the preparation, getting your gear together, turning your gear in. How did that all work out for you as a team? Because that's challenging too. Let me cut to the chase a little bit. Sometimes the easiest part of the race is the race itself. Getting to the race is the hard part. Did you find that experience?
Yeah, I think actually it felt like actually getting into the van, leaving the house with our kit in the back. That felt like a real achievement in itself. Just getting to the point where we felt ready to start had been probably a 14-month journey just to get to the point where we were ready to leave. There was a huge amount of relief when we got to Heathrow and Karen showed up with all of her bags. No missing bikes or anything. That was a concern up until that point. And then, we had the 12-hour drive to kind of talk about kit. And I think that's one of the things it was hardest to prepare for, was just what kit to take with us.
Right. A lot of decisions to make. Yep.
Yeah. So when we parked up in Oban, opened up the back of the van and started to kind of explode the kit out of the bags and work out what to take on the race. There was quite a bit of laughter from Karen as to kind of what we were planning on taking at some points, just the quantities of food, I think, primarily. And
well, the old expression, you always pack your fears, right?
Yes.
People scared of being cold, they pack too much clothing. If you think they're going to be hungry, they pack too much food. And so it sounds like you did that yourself, which is completely natural and common for a first experience.
Yeah, my 2 biggest fears going into the race from a personal perspective were tiredness, how that would affect me, and nutrition, and whether I would have the right stuff to eat, because it's not just my first adventure race, it was the first time I'd done anything of that length, first kind of endurance activity. So I didn't really know how my body would cope after the first 18, 24 hours.
Right. So you were literally dipping into brand new territory and a wide variety of the spectrum was very wide, so to speak. It was food, it was sleep, it was gear, it was holding it together. And so I got to give you credit. I mean, a pretty gutsy thing to dive right in like that. And it sounds like it was far less about the race and far more about the expedition. That it was that you like the challenge of diving into something this big, taking that big of a bite.
Yes, it was the adventure aspect was very much there, and the unknown kind of like, yeah, we didn't really know what it would be like to go through a transition because we hadn't done it before. So that was a big unknown. The effect of the length and the duration, and just all of that unknown added to the adventure, which was part of the appeal for me and the others.
Do you see yourself as being, if you will, an ancestor, as a descendant of the great UK British exploring attitude with the Royal Geographic Society, and how the UK has its own sense of exploration and adventure around the world? Do you feel like this is sort of akin to that?
I feel like that age of the kind of great Victorian explorer is kind of past, and we don't really live in that world anymore. So I don't identify as that, but I think there's definitely some of that, some of that spirit of going into the unknown and dealing with it.
Right. It has echoes of it, right? It has echoes. I mean, it wasn't like you were getting on a boat for 6 months traveling to a far part of the world. It wasn't telegram and, and carry a pigeon and get word back, but still in your own sense, the shoving off into the unknown with so many factors that you don't understand, there's definitely, like I said, there's echoes of that spirit that what you put together. And
I'm pleased we had maps that someone else had drawn.
Right. You weren't doing your own stuff, right? Good point. Yes. So you all get together, you get to Oban, your teammate has a good chuckle about all the gear that you've packed and overpacked and put together. From the beginning of the race itself, and from the beginning, not of the race, the beginning of being together, how did the team dynamic start right away? Because team is everything, right? So how did that start off?
I was expecting there to be kind of tension or awkwardness or just lack of cohesion, and there was none of that. The team just gelled really well. I mean, I think
that had to be a huge relief for you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. As team captain, I felt quite a bit of that pressure of, okay, it's down to me to hold the team together if it's not working, and my job was made really easy by just the way everyone in the team kind of did everything they could to help the team, and that was the priority. And
you had soldier friends on this, right? There was over a year-long commitment on their part. You brought everybody together. They're not there but for you, and you didn't want them to have an experience that would be regrettable or not enjoyable. So there was added pressure on you to have it go well. Yes,
yeah, and I definitely, if you look at the team photo that was taken when we got our bibs, I think you can see that that nervous tension in my face.
It existed, yeah. It's there, and I can relate to that too. It's there for all of us, right? This shoving off on this grand adventure. Yeah. So you get to Oban, you get your gear sorted, you have a good chuckle over all the gear you have. You begin to take things out, put things in, and then it's map day. And I believe that we got over 20 maps for the course of the race, right? So ITERA Scotland, ITERA Oban, 5-day race, 124 hours, starts on a Sunday, finishes on a Friday. And getting the maps is really hard because it's like taking a big gulp of something. There's a lot there. Who was your navigator, and how did you do with looking at the maps before the race?
So we didn't have a single navigator. We had so I'm pretty strong with nav. Alex and Conrad are both even stronger. We decided pretty early on that Alex would be the lead nav for the hill and the trekking stages, and Conrad would do the biking stages, and then we'd kind of take it in turns on the paddling stages. So I think that really helped because that played to their strengths. And something that helped the team gel really well was that, we all had different aspects we brought to it. We didn't come in with equal biking abilities or equal hiking experience or anything. We had strengths across the board, and that meant that, for example, Conrad was a lot faster on the bikes, and that he could use some of that extra energy and that speed to spend more time looking at the maps, and he did a fantastic job with the biking nav. And
so it sounds like there wasn't a huge difference in capacity among the teammates. It wasn't as if somebody was incredibly strong and somebody was incredibly slow or having a harder time. It sounds like you pretty much were all inside the same spectrum for the most part, at least before the race started.
Over all of the activities, yes, but there was definitely, myself and Alex were not as fast on the bikes. We had different paces when trekking, so yeah, we varied in terms of kind of absolute ability, but that meant we could carry each other at different points.
So now you have the maps, you have all your gear, you're getting going. The ITERA races, and this was James and Lisa Thurlow's last ITERA, and it's been gotten over to Paul McGrill and Dirty Events, and ITERA is going to continue. They really aren't designed to have, 35 teams started the race, right? And of the 35 teams that started the race, only 7 of them, I believe, went the long course, right? So you had 20-something teams that were either short course or DNF or things like that. So clearly, when you got a hold of those maps and the fact that this was hundreds of kilometers travel, did you make early decisions regarding your route? Like, did you know you were going to drop and not drop? Like, walk us through the beginning of your race, right? And for those at home, the race really began in a majestic fashion. The teammates woke up in Oban. We were put on a ferry out of Oban, made our way eventually to a ferry, to a bus, to a ferry, to the island of Iona. And then it began with a big open ocean water kayak to the island of Staffa. At the beginning of the race, David, when you were sitting there and you had this big thing in front of you, did you know going into it what parts you were going to skip over to start, or did you think you were going to go full course in the beginning and see what happened?
Right up until the point where we got the maps, we were thinking we're going to go full course until we get moved over onto the short course. And part of that was because we hadn't done it before. We didn't really know how the cutoffs would work, or the points, or just how the checkpoints would play out. But there was, after the main race briefing, there was the team captain's briefing. And then after that, there was an additional briefing that James ran for new teams. I think there was half a dozen teams who took part who had never done a adventure race before. So, and
I think he gave you some pretty honest advice, right, about the course?
Yes. And it was, part of that advice was short course early. Don't be afraid of that. And we very much took that on. We looked at the maps, decided that the opening leg was the 5K run around Iona. We decided we weren't going to run that, regardless of the pace of the rest of the teams. We wanted to do the full kayak paddle out to Staffa. We didn't want to skip any of that. And then we wanted to try and do the full Nevis hike and the full mountain bike, and then fit the rest of it in so that we were able then to avoid any cutoffs. So, I mean, we had to skip out the last couple of sections and could cross the finish line. So we kind of planned the race from a strategic perspective that so we could get that first paddle in and those final sections, and the rest we would see how we went with the short course, and kind of play it safe.
In retrospect, how do you like that strategy? Because there's a certain, there's the confidence of ignorance, right? You're a first time racer. You look at the course, 14 months. You want to eat the entire course, and so you say to yourself, "I'm just going to go until I drop." To his credit, James did a really nice job walking the newer teams away from that and saying you have to be really, really thoughtful about what you do and don't do. Yeah. And you mentioned two big things. You mentioned the big open paddle, which was beautiful and amazing. The trek across Mull. And then near the end of the race, 3/4 of the way through, there was the hike up and over Ben Nevis. And for those of you who don't know the geography of the UK, Ben Nevis is the highest point in the UK. And walking up and over it is a matter of pride for many people. And I know for myself too, we raced his Dark Zone podcast. Our lead navigator, Jimmy and Alyssa and Pete, our four of us, we said to ourselves, we're getting to Ben Nevis. Like, we're not going to lose out on that experience. That would have killed us to go all that way and not do it. So we too made some early decisions that treated us well. In the beginning of the race, what did you forsake? What did you not do? Like, you had the hike on Mull, you had the big mountain bike. What did you decide to cut early?
So we skipped checkpoints 4 and 5, the first two on Mull. So after that big open water paddle, the first trekking section, we skipped the first two optional checkpoints in that trek. And I think soon after dark on the first night, we were switching bibs into short course as we skipped those checkpoints.
Gotcha. So you got 6 and 7, right? Because you had because 7 was mandatory. So you got so for those listening at home, the way this race was set up was that there were checkpoints. To be a full course team, you had to get to every mandatory checkpoint and to be a finisher, you had to get to every mandatory checkpoint and you had to get to the finish. You were a finisher. If you got all of the checkpoints and you made the finish, you were a long course finisher. If you got all the mandatories and as many optionals as you wanted, you would be a short course finisher. You would qualify as a short. So you decided early to give up on those two checkpoints early, turn yourself onto the short course. But obviously you made up a lot of room. By doing that, you saved yourself hours and hours and hours of hiking. Because I remember before the race speaking to somebody who said that a local had said that the trek itself, if you did all those checkpoints, was going to be at least 17 hours. So big chunk of the race to spend out there.
Yes. Yeah. That, and we knew we wouldn't be among the fastest teams. We knew we were expecting to be at the back of the pack, kind of chasing the cutoffs. So we wanted to avoid that. And checkpoint 6 was an optional one that we decided we could still hit. We wanted to, as you say, enjoy the race as well. We didn't want to skip every part.
And that was kind of on the way to 7. Kind of.
Yeah. We made it on the way to 7.
Okay, so you come through Mull. Do you remember how long that took you to get through the Mull trek?
Yeah, I think that was 16 hours or something. It was that trek. That was a long trek. We took a 2-hour bivvy during
that first night. You slept on that first night. Okay.
It was the morning after the first night.
Got it. Because we started at 2:00 in the afternoon. So
we did the it was just getting dark by the time we finished the first open water paddle.
Got it.
So we did most of the trek in the dark. We then got down to off the hillside into a forest that we could get some shelter. Slept there, and then after 2 hours we continued on, and
gotcha.
And we finished that trek lunchtime.
Gotcha. You had that miserable hike down that dirt road from 7 down to the castle, which was miserable because walking on a road chews your feet up. So how did your feet hold together?
I found that trek on the road was actually we could maintain a better pace, because up until that point Mull had been just bogs, and actually not walking through water was a pleasant change. Yeah,
that was rather boggy up to your knees with the one, and every step was falling through, and people would trip and stumble, and plus the height and the steepness was rather intense. So you get to the castle, you get to do you do the kayak back to the mainland.
Yep.
And then we transitioned to mountain bikes. What did you do then? Did you stay on that full mountain bike course? Did you short the course to get to the next TA? How did you approach that?
Yeah, we short coursed at that point. We took the shortest option there because
gotcha. Yeah, which got you to Strothian, which got you back on your feet.
Yes. Right.
Okay. So then you went to it. So you went from your short course to mountain bike. Did you capture any of the mountain bike points, or did you go right to Strothian?
We went right to Strothian.
There. Good call. So, good call.
Yeah. None of those points were mandatory. We picked up all of those.
Got it. We got all 3 of them. And they were, that was intense. After you got the thing we found there was, and this is interesting, shoving off from that TA after the kayak was very hard. The wind kicked up and we headed north. And that was really, really hard because it was the second night, right? We'd hiked all the way through Mull. We really hadn't slept a whole lot. We hadn't slept at all. And one of the harder things was getting on the bike and pushing off into the dark, knowing that you're going to a really remote area. We didn't have our sleeping bags with us. They were not in our bike bags, which was not really a mistake. We just didn't bring our sleeping bags with us. And that was a long, hard night, to the point where we had a bivvy in an open, we had that long bushwhack, and I had to lay down in an open field at one point and just had to take a sleep. So it was good doing it, but it really took a lot out of us. So good call on your part from a race management perspective, getting ahead. So you get off the bike, you get on the trek, you then have to trek. You then hear the trek to a kayak.
Yep.
And did you take the old herd route? Did you go up and over? Did you go to the west?
No, we still cut that route as well.
Okay.
So we were still feeling pretty concerned about the length of the race at that point.
No, but a good move on your part, right? Because you held yourself, because there's still a lot of race ahead of you. And the last thing you probably wanted to do was to leave a lot of it behind you, right? So now you get to Pollock, and you had that great kayak in Pollock.
Yes.
Which was
that was fantastic.
So say a bit about that kayak, because that was just something else.
Yeah, so that kayak started on a lock, then went to a river, then went back to a sea lock, and checkpoints on one of the islands, and then on a castle. It was a beautiful paddle, and just felt. I felt like the kayaking stages were quite. I could recover during those stages.
So did you find it interesting, as someone doing this for the first time, how when you're crushing it on a kayak or on a trek or on a bike, you cannot wait to do something different? Like, get me off this bicycle and I just want to start paddling. Did you have that experience? Like, it actually felt good to the movement was great. You just had to do a different movement.
Yeah, using a different muscle group was kind of even just getting out of the kayak and finding the checkpoint on the island, stretching legs and warming up. During that first open sea kayak, some of the team got pretty cold because as the sun went down. And
did you have dry suits on?
We had kind of partial wetsuits with windproof layers on. That we didn't start off with the windproof layers because it was pretty warm at the start of the race, and then it got chillier, and I think we should have layered up sooner because we almost made a nav error during that first kayak.
Okay, you were coming to the east and picking the wrong island to get off at.
But we managed to catch that, and it wasn't too much of a problem. But so temperature management.
Had that feel being on the water. Now all of a sudden you're on the water, it's getting cold, and you're looking at the maps, and it's not really all adding up. How did you deal with that as a team?
We spoke about it. We tried to orientate ourselves against where we were. We rafted the two kayaks up together so we could get two pairs of eyes on the map, and went through from there. So we just spoke about it, and there was no blame or animosity.
Right, you were just going to figure it out, right? You agreed to you agreed to figure. And the good news is you got to the right island and you punched the checkpoint and the world moved on. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So now, after you had finished that the mountain bike and you got on that great paddle, at the beginning of that paddle, which to your point was a lock to a river, to eventually out to a bit of the open ocean. They had to short that a little bit because of the conditions. And beautiful, right? Cemetery checkpoint on this gorgeous island. The castle. I mean, it was like literally call Central Casting, say put us on a Scottish adventure, and to their credit, what a place to Tom Gibbs, the course designer. I mean, punching checkpoints at abandoned Scottish castles. Yes, please, right? 1,000 times over. But now by this point in the race, you're a couple days into it. You've now trekked, you've mountain biked, you've paddled. So now you're up against some of the things that you were worried about in the beginning, the fatigue, the food, the cold, the being awake. How were you all holding it together at the end of that second paddle?
So at the end of the second paddle, we were in a pretty good place. I think there was Some minor aches and pains, like I know Alex was suffering with his wrist a little bit from the kayaking. I'd had problems earlier in the race with nutrition. That was during the first hike, actually, that I just hadn't gotten into the habit of eating while I was holding the paddle, and then
Okay, so you got behind on your calories.
Yeah. So I felt pretty lightheaded and needed to stop for a bit in the body bag and get some food. And
that's what you learned, right? You learned that and once again, to your credit, not only were you doing a massive adventure race, but also you were in school and you were learning things about it and the difficulty of eating while paddling, drinking while paddling. I know that many teams will use a bladder and they'll put it in the back of their PFD and they'll drink out of that, because if you stop paddling to drink something, you're losing time. So it sounds like you got a bit behind on your calories and you had to recover a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. But I was, the team helped me through that fantastically. We shared weight and from the pack, and I think within probably half an hour or so, I was back up.
Gotcha. Did you see during the race? Did you live the example that like everybody has a low point? The key is not everybody at the same time. Did everybody sort of go through that a little bit during the race?
Yes, and that's something I heard on one of your previous podcasts that stuck with me, kind of going into the race, was as long as people on the team have low points at different times, that's fine. The rest of the team can carry them through. And I think there was a point on the final day. It was kind of at the point where maybe a few too many of us were having low points at the same time.
Right, which happens. You're 4 or 5 days into it. Everybody kind of runs out of gas eventually, right? So you're there. Yep. So you had the paddle. We then had the trek. Glen Weig, I believe, was the name where we transitioned from the paddle to the mountain bike.
Yes.
Yes. And then you how'd you do with that? Because that mountain bike was actually a nice mountain bike to do at that point, because it wasn't too hard to get the Glenfinnan. How'd you do with that?
So we shortcut a lot of that, and I think so. Going back, if we were to do the race again, we would do a bit more of that mountain bike leg before for William and through Glenfinnan. So you probably would have gone north of Glenfinnan. You would have gone north, right? Because we did the same thing. We continued east to get to Fort William. Checkpoints 18 to 19, which were worth a lot time-wise. Points, like time and points, kind of the same thing in these races. That you chose, like we did, to go east. You're saying that you would have probably, looking back, you probably would have gone north and gone for those. Yes, because we arrived at Fort William having cycled. I think it was all on pretty good roads. For 60 kilometers.
Yeah. So it was an easy road ride. It really wasn't. While there were some hills, it wasn't too much to do that, right? And so you felt like maybe you left a little bit too much out there. You probably should have. It would have treated you better to hindsight's 20/20, right, David?
And what we didn't know when we made those decisions was how far ahead of the lead teams we would arrive at that Fort William checkpoint. So we, being a short course team, we were held there until the long course teams arrived and the first one left. So we were at that TA in Fort William for about 10 hours.
Okay. Oh, so your decision to short parts of the course made sense until you got to a point in the race where you were so far ahead of the course. Because one thing we do for our listeners to explain, a common practice in the adventure racing, especially for the longer races, is race directors like to have the lead full course team to be the lead full course team. And so what they will do is they will hold short course teams in the TA until at least the leader passes through. So you got to the I believe it was the horse yards, right? There was this beautiful horse stable area right by Ben Nevis. And they right in the market. And so they held you there for 10. So you had a really big long rest and sleep and sort of get yourself all together.
Yes, we could have made more of that sleep. I think we only got 3 or 4 hours of sleep there. and the rest was sat around eating, relaxing, trying not to get cold.
Gotcha. And then once but now that was good for you because admittedly you could have made better use of it. You started the Ben Nevis trek pretty much refreshed. You had a good rest and you had a good sleep in you, because that really was the crux of the race for a lot of teams. I'm of the opinion that everything up until that point was prologue. Like getting to Ben Nevis was really, for me, was really the crux of the race. And a lot of other teams learned that also. And for Ben Nevis, it took us up the ledges route. So talk a bit about tell us about your Ben Nevis experience.
Yeah. So we, looking at the route, we knew it was a section we didn't want to do in the dark. So we'd kind of planned our arrival at Fort William for that. But because of the lead teams being held up there, we started that trek about 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, at exactly 8. We were allowed to go with a lot of other teams. And that was really good that the pack was quite close
kind of a
at
herd.
that point. So yeah, we weren't out on our own. There was a lot of other folk we could talk to. And this wasn't a route I knew, but Alex, who was lead nav at that point, it was a route he knew about and knew was a pretty hard route, not just the ledges, but also after Ben Nevis, the arete that followed. That was a route that he knew about and had seen YouTube videos before, and that I think that was almost as exposed and tricky as the ledges route. But
yeah, I've heard that from other people too.
For me, that was part of the race that I really enjoyed in the moment. I expected a lot of the race to be type 2 fun, where you enjoy it afterwards, but this was very much, I enjoyed it. I had fun while we were doing that trek heading up.
And to your point, that was really adventure at that point. That was, and to your point, we had to wear helmets up and over Ben Nevis, and they said you could take the helmets off after you crest and you cross Ben Nevis. We commented that the helmet should have been kept on the entire time, because when you around the arete and the exposed, and I agree with you, like that was really, that you felt like you were in a true blue adventure race. And I agree about the having fun in the moment as opposed to being type 2 fun, which is miserable, but you enjoy it later on.
Yeah. And I think the interesting point was in between those two technical challenging sections, you cross over the tourist route up Nevis. And so we were up there in our race gear.
Looking like Martians, right?
Big packs, walking past families with kids.
Right. People in flip-flops, they're drinking a coffee, right? And it's
exactly.
and then you punch and you go off the other side. Like they're all looking at you because you keep walking over the end. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the punch point was actually at the trig point right at the summit, which at the time we got up there was a big queue of tourists wanting to take photos up there.
Yep.
So,
yeah. We were like, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me. We punched and we kept going.
Yeah. We snuck up the back, climbed up the summit cairn and punched.
So big stage, big event, a lot of height, a lot of technical travel. How was your body holding together? Feet, your shoulders, your back, the pack. Were you feeling the weight of the event, or were you still humming along pretty solidly? And I'm talking about all of you. Like, how are all the teammates doing?
So it varied at different points. So for me, during that Nevis hike, I'd got the nutrition, the layering. It all just worked for me. So I was kind of bouncing along. Not everyone was. We had to kind of encourage each other along at various points, and particularly towards the end of that stage, after we'd been hiking all day, and it was getting dark, and we were descending off the hill.
Right.
I'm sure you remember that point where you can see the lights at Kinloch 11, where the next checkpoint was, and just descending into what we called the Valley of Despair as we led off it. It seemed like it would be such a short distance as we descended off the the technical hills. But yeah, we just got literally bogged down in that. And that was, I think, probably one of the low points for most of us, as we kind of were running out of energy. The nav wasn't tricky, but it was just we were moving slower across the map than we wanted to. And that was an interesting thing about this race was all the maps were 1 to 50,000 scale. Mm-hmm. So we on the biking sections that worked well. On the trekking sections, it felt like we should be moving faster because we're used to using 1 to 25. So I think that was a real challenge that we all felt was that length of time it took us.
And I think you're spot on. I think also the other thing too for the people as they undertake these bigger races, when you circle Ben Nevis on the calendar and on the map as being a big thing to do, Ben Nevis and the scale of that trek came pretty early, right? So you climb Ben Nevis, you visit with the tourists, and you fall into that trap of thinking, well, we're done. Like, we climbed Ben Nevis, here we go. I would argue that Ben Nevis was probably 30% into that day, into that one section. I mean, maybe even less. There was a lot of travel left after that, after Ben Nevis. Yeah.
And seeing when we got to Nevis, the clouds kind of lifted a bit and we could see where we were going. And you could see, okay, we're going along that ridge line. We're going down and then up and over that range and then up and over the next range. And then, that's kind of when the length of the trek started to.
Well, also too, as you came down that huge descent into the valley, you walked down the valley, which was pretty muddy, pretty mucky. You punched at that little bridge. You had to cross the stream, and then you had the hardest climb of the hardest climb of the entire day was in front of you, which was that sustained climb up and over the top. And then you had to go down the other side, and you could see that. And depending on your route, and we took a pretty unique route coming off that part. We didn't take the traditional route that other teams took. Our navigators were spot on. They thought they had found a better route to come around. It ended up being solid as it was, but it was a non-traditional route. Yeah. But you could see where you had to be for so long, and it felt like you were never getting closer to it.
Yes, that, and at that point the midges were out.
Yeah.
So it was. Folk were at the kind of running out of water. So there was that going on in that huge hike. But we found some waterfalls coming down we could fill up some water from, and that made a difference to morale in the team. And then we kept going. And
a little food, a little drink, keeps rolling. And so then eventually you come off that really, really hard trek, and now you're deep into the race. And that was the Queen stage, right? That was the hardest trek of the entire. That was also the last trek of the race. You then get into Kinloch Levin, which had the TA, and it had the Via Ferrata. How did that go for you?
So we made the choice actually to do the Via Ferrata before resting. So we got into the TA, we had a snack, we went back out, and I think it was 3:00 in the morning or something, pitch black. We did the Via Ferrata and then we slept. So that was a surreal experience, kind of, because we were sat in that sports hall watching the safety briefing we needed to watch before being led in the Via Ferrata, and we were all nodding off to sleep.
You may not remember this. We were together there for that. In that gymnasium, the TA, our two teams were next to each other, and I remember chatting with your teammates. And you're right. The nighttime, 1:30, 2:00 in the morning. You're going on 16, 17 hours of travel, falling asleep, and then doing the Via Ferrata. Half asleep. Now we're all here still talking about it, but like, holy cow, like that was pretty intense.
Yeah. And I've not done one of those before. So kind of clipping in, going through, and it was, I knew what to do and kind of moving through it. And I feel like I didn't really get to experience and enjoy the grandeur of Grey Mare's Tail that we were, that big waterfall we were going past. But it was, that felt like probably the sketchiest part of the whole race. Was if something serious was going to go wrong, I think that was going to be it for us. But
yeah, and you were always clipped in at one point. But if you took a fall there, it was going to be high consequence. Like no one was dying, but you were going to get busted up pretty bad.
And you were clipping yourself in, so you could, if you clipped into the wrong part or you unclipped both clips before it, that there was potential there for it to go wrong. But we worked together as a team there. We did buddy checks as we were going through, and we got to the end, and we quite quickly fell asleep back in our tent.
We call it adventure racing, right? We don't call it couch racing. Right. Yeah. We agree to try these dangerous things, and there is a level of danger, but getting a car is probably just as dangerous.
Yes.
So Via Ferrata, which for those at home probably took 2 hours. They said 40 minutes. It was 2 hours. We were there. You climbed about 150-foot gorge up and over the top waterfall. We did it same as you in the dark. So we saw nothing. I saw everything inside the scope of my headlamp, and that's about it. Yeah. I could have been on Mars for all I knew. You come in, you take a sleep.
Then you get to the end of the Via Ferrata, and you then need to walk back down. If you took a different route in, you may not have done this, but when we came in to the TA, we walked in with a team who had just finished the Via Ferrata as well. So our last bit of the trek was, we had to repeat again after the Via Ferrata.
Yeah, we came in a different way, which I have no clue what it was. We basically were walking around this town until we saw the flags. You get to sleep. Now all of a sudden, now you're sniffing for home, right?
Yeah.
Because the trick now was a big, long bike, which was going to get us to the final paddle. There was an orienteering section built in there. Mm-hmm. The bike was pretty intense. We saw each other a lot on that bike because you were on the Great Western Way, I believe it was called. And then we came through, we passed the ski area, and then we were in the bogs. How did that bike go for you?
So we were really apprehensive about the biking just because of the length of it.
Long.
And we knew that the Devil's Staircase was pretty challenging. So the bike started with a really steep climb up that most of us pushed most of the way up. That climb, and then the down was fairly technical, and we ended up pushing a lot of that down as well, just through. I was pretty nervous about getting hurt and injured.
And don't leave out the fact that every 10 meters or so, we had to walk our bike over basically water cutouts, right? So the trail, and so you couldn't go more than 10 meters without having to get off your bike, step over a 18-inch hole, get back on the bike. That was a very frustrating part of the course for me, because our team did very well on the mountain bike, and I was mad that we couldn't ride more of that.
I loved that part of Scotland. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this race was because I've not been to the Scottish Highlands for years and years, but that's that area coming down into Glencoe and Glen Etive is one of my favourite parts of the world. So I found it quite tough that I didn't enjoy that biking section down into Glencoe as much as I hoped I would.
Right.
So, that was probably another low point for me. And there was one of the very few times there was any tension in the team, I think, was with the speed we were going at that point, and wanting to not get to the point where we were having to do that. And then that final paddle, which had some open sea sections, we didn't want to do that in the dark too much. So we were trying to time things, and we were moving slower on the bikes than we wanted to.
Gotcha. And so there was a bit of psychologically, the race was starting to wear on you, right? Because now you're day 4, you're getting close to the finish, but the hardest biking section was right. So you had the hardest trekking section, then the Via Ferrata, then you had the hardest biking section. And that's what makes it really difficult, this kind of adventure racing. It gets harder as you get through it, right? And so you had that long section in front of you. The good news is when you got the Glencoe, you had a lot of the Great Western Way in front of you, which was old herd path. So we could ride a lot of that. So that was refreshing to get on the bike and actually feel like you were making up speed.
Yeah, that was really good to actually from. There was a bit more up after past the Glencoe ski point, and at that point we met another team who had an injury and were walking back out at that point.
Broken collarbone.
That kind of focused our minds on not pushing too hard or fast on the bike at that point. But yeah, from there, it was rideable all the way to the end. It was there were hills, and we pretty quickly got into a routine of if one of the team got off to walk, a few of us would, so we could use that as effectively using a different muscle group, as we were talking about earlier. And
I found I could walk up the hill faster than I could cycle it. Yeah,
and regardless of the speed, just using different leg muscles to get yourself up the hill, I felt that that's probably what made the difference for me, for being able to get to the end of what was a 160k bike ride or so in the end.
So at the end of that bike was 160k, it was the tough Devil Staircase and the Great Western Way. And then it was the bog, right? You had to ride down the bog, and then it was the hills to get to the orienteering section. How'd you like the O section?
So for me, that was kind of the turning point when actually we realized that, yes, we would finish this race. Up until then.
That's a great feeling, right? Yep.
Yeah. Right up until that point, I wasn't sure whether we would be able to make it to the end. But yeah, we were trying to decide as a team whether to do the orienteering or not, whether to push on with the biking. And yeah, we just had a really good moment sheltered down inside our body bag behind the orienteering tent. Had a team chat, and we decided to do the orienteering. And yeah, just that break, get off the bike, get running. We ran some of the orienteering section that we hadn't expected to run any of the course.
So there's nothing quite like the energy of knowing that you're going to finish and you're getting close to the end. And I believe you took advantage of the open cafe.
Yes, we very much did. So I was pretty disappointed we didn't have time earlier on to stop at the King's House and go to the pub there and get some chips. But then, yeah, that hospitality that family showed, and by opening back up the cafe, bringing out their Sunday roast to carve up as steak sandwiches.
A classic adventure race moment, right? We get to the orienteering section, and the cafe, the pub is closed, and someone convinces the owner to come out and to crack open the door. Next thing you know, every ounce of food the guy has in the cafe is being bought by hungry adventure racers. He sold all his pizza, and then he brought his family there, and he brought over their Sunday roast. And the Sunday roast got chopped up and eaten by the adventure racers. It was a great moment. And for a lot of racers, it came at just the right time.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you arrived to the orienteering section, the next goal was to ride to the paddle, and you had to paddle to the finish. But what did you find at the O section? What did you find out about the paddle?
So yeah, we found out that the paddle had been called off due to bad weather. At that point it had been raining for quite a while. And it was the winds, I think, were the biggest problem for the sea state. And yeah, it had been replaced by a biking section, a lot of it on road. So yeah, coming halfway through a long bike ride to find that the second half had been turned into kind of second
another long bike ride. Yep.
Yeah.
So now you come in, you clearly you're going to finish. You enjoy the O course. You do some running. You eat at the cafe. You know you got a long bike ahead of you. Walk us through the last 5K. You're a team. You've had a big experience together. You're coming into Oban. 14 months of your life has been centered around this event, and here you are cycling in. How did you feel?
So it was. So we got to the point where we were probably the only off-road section on that bit, actually. It's up to some hills just before coming in. So a really nice point was there's a bridge over the Atlantic at that point that we were due to paddle under, but that checkpoint had been kept in the backup route.
Yep,
so,
CP33. Yep.
Yeah. So we still did that final checkpoint. Just as the sun was coming up, we saw the sunrise. We were all feeling really, really pleased, but a few worrying moments of kind of nodding off to sleep while cycling along a pretty it wasn't busy, but pretty major road at that point.
Road, right? An active road.
There were cars going past. So we stopped for some Haribo and got some sugar back in us, and then carried on. And we were just pleased and tired, and just it hadn't really sunk in at that point as we were coming down into Oban that we'd finished, we'd completed. We didn't know where we were in the pack. We knew we weren't right at the back, but we didn't know that we were quite as far up into the middle of the pack as we were. So
and the results, you finished. You were out of 32 teams that finished. You were 16. You were dead center. You were 16 out of 32.
Yes.
So you pull into Oban, and you go through the celebration. You take the photo by the finish, and you look back on it. And you've now had a chance to process out the experience, right? You mentioned you took a week off. You took a week's vacation with your family. Looking back on it, clearly you're very pleased with your experience, right? You everything you wanted to do, you did. You were smart about the course management, things like that. What was, looking back on it now, the experience that you had compared to the experience that you thought you were going to have? What's the difference between the two?
So the actual experience that I was going to have was a lot of unknowns, and kind of answering those unknowns about myself, about the sport, about the teamwork. And so I got answers to those questions. I was pleasantly surprised that things like tiredness weren't really as much of a problem as I feared they might be. So it was better than I thought it would be from a enjoyable experience perspective. I thought it would be the sort of thing that you would look back on and enjoy having finished it. But I really enjoyed a lot of the actual experience of doing it in the moment, and just that whole kind of being away from mobile phone, modern technology.
Great feeling, right? You're like, it for 5 straight days, right? It's you, it's your teammates, the map. That's your whole world.
Yeah. And you were focused on just that objective of getting yourselves across the finish line. And so you that focus, that disconnect, that enjoying that journey through Scotland. That's the thing that sticks with me now, is that journey that we completed.
What do you think to the newer racers sitting at home and listening right now? What are 3 things that you did right that they should do when they race?
So we embraced the unknown. So we knew that we wouldn't be able to plan, and we had ideas on when we wanted to sleep, what time we wanted to be at various places, but we accepted that plan would go out the window as soon as the race started. And kind of the act of building up that plan was a bit more kind of mental prep for the race rather than actual plan to follow. So we embraced that unknown. That worked really well. The training I did, and the number of hours I put in to get kind of physically fit enough to do the race, and I was really pleased with how how that worked. And I think a big part of that was I worked with a coach and a personal trainer early on to help get me to the point where I could do those long hours on foot and bike. So that worked well. And then the third was probably around kit and just how we ended up taking a lot of kit and worrying about a lot of kit that ended up not being that important during the race. There's key parts you want to get right, like a rucksack and footwear and the right layers. But then, we ended up with too many changes of clothes and too much food and spares of all sorts of things that we just didn't need.
So what's next for you? You checked off this big huge box. Your first adventure race is a massive race like this. You centered 14 months of your life around it. What do you got cooking next?
I don't know. I need to work that out. So first priority was getting back, spending time with kids, wife, family stuff, looking at more bike rides, maybe doing some bike packing with the kids, that sort of thing, trying to find a way that I can keep doing stuff like this without it having such a kind of big time commitment for the preceding 12 months. So if I can do some 36 48-hour races without so much prep, then that's the sort of thing that I think would be ideal. One of the challenges in the UK is we don't have such a good kind of bank of those race series that we can just take part in.
You have to travel to get to somewhere like that. You have to go to the continent. You have to come to America.
And
there is a 5-day race coming up in June of 2023 in Pennsylvania called the Endless Mountains. If you want to bring over an international team,
traveling to do it will that feels like that would be a whole nother dimension to worry about. And it's I'm not going to say never, but next year I think would be too much of
it's a little too close.
But it sounds like a great event though.
Good stuff. Well, it sounds like you got the bug now, right? It sounds like Eco Challenge Fiji was good to you. It sounds like ITERA was a tremendously beneficial experience for you and for your teammates. Before we let you go back to your life and to your family and to everything you got going on, any closing thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I've just really one of the aspects I've enjoyed is the community, and I think the fact that we were able to reach out and say we need a fourth racer and get someone as fantastic as Karen to join the team. I think the folk we spoke to during the race, I think that's a fantastic part of this sport.
Holy cow, listeners, just like David said, what a wild race. Never did an adventure race, never did an earlier race. First time doing this, dives right in, 5 days, goes out there and absolutely crushes it. Thank you, David, for your, even though you'll deny it, your British Explorer profile. Fantastic stuff. So thanks, David, for being here. Thank you, listeners, for being here. This has been the 52nd episode of The Dark Zone, as sponsored by the New York Adventure Racing Association, NYARA.org. Please check out their website to learn all about the longest day, their premier race coming up this August 2023. If you like The Dark Zone, the best way to help out the show is to head over to your streaming platform of choice and leave a click or a like or a comment. Tell a friend about it. Feel free to send me your ideas for episodes. Brian at ardarkzone.com, all one word. Thanks for being here, listeners. Thanks for all that you do for adventure racing. Have great training. Enjoy the Northern Hemisphere winter, and we will see you soon.